I'm Emma, and this is where my story begins. I was a woman in love, filled with the dreams and hopes that come with marrying the person I believed to be the love of my life. The wedding was an affair to remember, filled with laughter, love, and promises of a shared future. My husband, whom I'll call James for the sake of this story, was a charming man, full of charisma and wit. We met at college, and it didn't take long for us to fall deeply in love. "Emma, do you believe in fate?" he once asked me, his eyes twinkling with mischief. "I believe in us, James. That's all the fate I need," I replied, my heart swelling with affection. We both dreamed of a life filled with joy, children, and a beautiful home where we could grow old together. Those dreams seemed so achievable as we danced our first dance as a married couple. "Emma, I promise to love you every day, in every way, for the rest of our lives," James whispered into my ear as we swayed to our favorite song. "I'll hold you to that promise, my love," I answered, a playful smile on my face. The weeks following the wedding were a whirlwind of joy and planning for the future. James was a dreamer, always looking for the next big adventure, while I was the practical one, grounded and determined to build a stable life for our family. We found the perfect house, a place that we could call our own. "Can you imagine raising our children here, Emma? This house is meant to be ours," he exclaimed as we toured the place. "It's beautiful, James, but it's expensive." "Can we handle such a large loan?" I questioned, my pragmatic side taking over. "Trust me, Emma, we'll make it work. You and I can conquer the world together," he assured me, his eyes full of conviction. We took out a $1.03 million loan, a sum that was both thrilling and terrifying. I believed in us, in our ability to make our dreams come true. "Here's to our new beginning, Emma," James toasted on the night we moved in. "To us and our forever," I replied, clinking glasses and feeling that everything was falling into place. But as time would reveal, forever can be an elusive thing, and dreams can sometimes turn into nightmares. Our beautiful beginning was just the first chapter in a story that would take turns I never could have anticipated. It was a time of innocence and love, a time before the shadows crept in, and the man I loved became a stranger. Little did I know, the decisions we made in those early days would set the stage for a battle I never saw coming. But in that moment, as we embarked on our new life together, everything felt perfect and the future seemed full of endless possibilities. Life in our new home was a dream come true. The spacious rooms, the lovely garden, and the promise of the life we were building together made every day a joy. I found myself spending more time at work, driven by the determination to pay off the loan. James, on the other hand, was struggling in his career, often coming home, frustrated and demotivated. "James, maybe you should look for another job, something that suits you better," I suggested one evening, concern etching my voice. "Emma, I don't know. I thought this was my calling. Maybe I'm just not good at anything," he replied, a hint of defeat in his eyes. "Don't talk like that. You're amazing and you'll find your way. We're in this together," I reassured him, trying to lift his spirits. As time went by, I became pregnant with our daughter, Lucy. The joy of expecting our first child overshadowed any concerns we had. James's excitement was contagious, and we spent hours talking about our hopes and dreams for our little one. "Emma, she's going to be as smart and beautiful as her mother. I can't wait to meet her," James said, his hand resting on my growing belly. "I hope she has your sense of humor and kindness, James," I replied, smiling at the love and anticipation in his eyes. Lucy's birth was a turning point in our lives. Holding her in my arms for the first time, I realized that everything I'd worked for was worth it. Our family was complete, and I felt an overwhelming sense of contentment. "James, look at her! She's perfect! We're family now," I whispered, tears of joy in my eyes. "We made her, Emma. We made this beautiful little girl. I love you more than ever," James responded, his voice choked with emotion. The following years were filled with the ordinary magic of raising a child. Lucy's laughter filled our home, and our love for her grew with each passing day. But underneath the surface, tensions were brewing. The weight of the loan hung over us, and my contributions overshadowed James's minimal financial support. I sensed a growing resentment in him, but I pushed it aside, focusing on our family. "Emma, do you ever feel like all we do is work and pay bills?" James asked one night, a faraway look in his eyes. "We're building a future, James. It's hard now, but it'll be worth it in the end. We're doing this for Lucy, for us," I said, trying to keep the faith. "We are, aren't we?" he replied, but his voice lacked conviction. As I worked tirelessly to pay off the loan, I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something was changing in James. His once vibrant spirit seemed dulled, and the spark in his eyes was fading. Our beautiful life was still intact, but cracks were beginning to appear. I chose to ignore them, focusing instead on our achievements and the love we shared. But in the back of my mind, a small voice whispered that the life we were building was on shaky ground, and I couldn't help but wonder what lay ahead. Life has a way of sneaking up on you. Just when you think you've got everything figured out, it throws a curveball and the world you've built begins to crumble. That's what happened to James and me. It started subtly. James became distant, often lost in thought. He began to come home late from work, sometimes reeking of alcohol. "James, where were you? Dinner's been ready for hours," I asked one night, concern and frustration mingling in my voice. "I was out with some friends, Emma. Can't a man have a little fun?" He snapped back, his tone harsh and unrecognizable. "But we had plans tonight. Remember? Lucy's school play." He waved me away, muttering an apology that didn't reach his eyes. That was the first of many broken promises and missed commitments. Our home, once filled with laughter and warmth, became a place of tension and unspoken resentment. Days turned into weeks, and James's behavior became more erratic. The man I had married, the man who had promised to love me forever, was slipping away. "James, what's going on? Talk to me, please," I begged one night, tears in my eyes. "Nothing's going on, Emma. Why do you keep asking?" "I'm fine," he yelled, his eyes cold and distant. I knew something was terribly wrong, but I couldn't put my finger on it. Was it stress from work? Was he unhappy with our life? I racked my brains, trying to figure out what had changed, but I kept coming up empty. Lucy noticed it too. My sweet, sensitive daughter became withdrawn, picking up on the tension between her parents. "Mommy, why is Daddy always so angry?" she asked one day, her big eyes filled with confusion and worry. "I don't know, sweetheart. Sometimes grown-ups have problems they need to figure out. But we still love each other very much," I reassured her, though I was far from certain myself. The coldness in our home was palpable, like a chilling wind that had settled over us. The love and trust we had built seemed to be eroding, replaced by anger, confusion, and a growing sense of despair. I tried to talk to James, to reach out and understand what was happening, but he shut me out at every turn. "James, we need to talk about this. We can't go on like this. What's happening to us?" I pleaded one night, desperate to break through his icy facade. "There's nothing to talk about, Emma. Just leave me alone," he replied, his voice devoid of emotion. I felt a pang of fear and a growing sense of loss. Who was this man I had married? Where was the loving, caring partner I had once known? Our marriage was unraveling, and I felt powerless to stop it. The walls were closing in, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something terrible was about to happen. As the months wore on, James's behavior became more unpredictable. He was like a stranger in our home, his coldness and indifference a constant reminder of how far we had fallen. I clung to the memories of our happy past, but they seemed like a distant dream, a cruel reminder of what we had lost. In my heart, I knew that our story was taking a dark turn, and I braced myself for the storm I knew was coming. But nothing could have prepared me for the horror that awaited us. The love and trust we had built were about to be shattered in the most brutal way imaginable, and I would be left to pick up the pieces of our broken lives. The change in James was no longer something I could ignore or explain away. His late nights, his coldness, and his growing disdain for our family life gnawed at my heart. I knew something was terribly wrong, but I never could have imagined the horrifying truth. One evening, as I was putting Lucy to bed, the door slammed, and I heard James's voice, slurred and loud, from the doorstep. "Emma, where are you?" "Come meet my new friend," he shouted, his words tinged with a drunken arrogance I had never heard before. My heart pounded as I walked towards the front door, Lucy's worried eyes following me. "Mommy, is Daddy okay?" she asked, her voice trembling. "It's okay, sweetheart. Stay here," I replied, trying to keep the fear out of my voice. As I opened the door, I was met with a sight that will forever be etched in my mind. James stood there, swaying slightly, his arm draped around a young woman I had never seen before. Her eyes were wild, her laughter shrill and out of place. "Emma, meet my new wife. You finally paid off the loan, and now I can live here with her. I want a divorce," he spat, his words a cruel dagger to my heart. "What? James, what are you talking about? This isn't you. Please, let's talk about this," I stammered, disbelief and terror washing over me. The stranger, still laughing, held out the divorce papers, her eyes glinting with malice. "Here you go, Emma. Time to move on," she sneered. My mind reeled, unable to process what was happening. Anger and shock welled up inside me, and without thinking, I grabbed the papers and ripped them to shreds. "You will not do this to me! To Lucy! You're drunk, James! Go to bed and we'll talk in the morning, I screamed, tears streaming down my face. James's face twisted into a snarl, and before I knew what was happening, he lashed out, his fist connecting with my face. I fell to the ground, my head spinning, pain and betrayal overwhelming me. The room went silent, except for the sounds of James and his mistress leaving, their harsh laughter echoing in my ears. I lay there, stunned and broken, unable to comprehend what had just happened. My sweet Lucy, wise beyond her years, came out of her room, her small hands clutching a camera. "Mommy, I captured what happened on camera," she whispered, her eyes wide with fear. My heart broke as I looked at my daughter, her innocence shattered by the violence she had witnessed. The man we had loved and trusted had become a monster. "We have to go to the police, Lucy. We have to make this right," I said, determination steeling me against the pain and shock. That night marked the end of my marriage and the beginning of a battle for justice. I knew that our lives would never be the same again. The love and trust that had once been the foundation of our family were gone, replaced by fear, anger, and a thirst for revenge. The morning after the horrifying incident, my face still aching from James's blow, I sat down with Lucy to review the footage she had captured. It was painful to watch, but I knew that it was the key to our fight for justice. "Mommy, will Daddy go to jail?" Lucy asked, her voice small and filled with confusion. "I don't know, sweetheart, but we have to do what's right. We have to make sure no one gets hurt like this again," I answered, my voice catching in my throat. We went to the police station, Lucy's small hand in mine, the weight of the evidence heavy in my heart. The process was cold and clinical, the officers asking questions, taking statements, reviewing the footage. "Mrs. Thompson, this is strong evidence against your husband." "We'll start the investigation immediately," Detective Johnson said, his eyes filled with a mixture of sympathy and determination. "Thank you, Detective. Please, make sure he pays for what he's done," I replied, my voice trembling with a mix of anger and relief. Days turned into weeks, and the investigation gathered momentum. The evidence Lucy had captured, along with my testimony, was enough to build a strong case against James. "You've done the right thing, Emma," my lawyer, Mrs. Davis, assured me. "This evidence is powerful. He won't get away with this." I hoped she was right, but fear still gnawed at me. What if he got off? What if he came back? I knew that the battle was far from over. I spent my days trying to maintain a semblance of normalcy for Lucy, but the strain was taking its toll. Friends and family rallied around us, but nothing could erase the pain and betrayal. "Emma, we're here for you, whatever you need, my sister," Sarah told me, her eyes filled with concern. "I know, Sarah, and I appreciate it, but I can't help but feel like everything's falling apart," I replied, my voice breaking. "You're strong, Emma. You'll get through this." "We all believe in you," Sarah said, her words a balm to my wounded soul. The court date was set, and the days leading up to it were a blur of anxiety and preparation. I knew that I had to be strong, to face James and make sure that he was held accountable for his actions. "Mommy, will we be okay?" Lucy asked one night, her eyes filled with worry. "Yes, sweetheart, we'll be okay. We have each other, and that's what matters," I said, holding her close, trying to believe my own words. The trial loomed like a dark cloud, but I knew that I had the evidence on my side. I had the truth, and I was ready to fight for justice, for myself, for Lucy, and for all the women who had been silenced and abused. The day of the trial arrived, and with it, a tumult of emotions. Fear, anger, determination, and a thirst for justice roiled within me as I prepared to face James in court. My lawyer, Mrs. Davis, was a rock of support. "Emma, we've got this. The evidence is strong, and justice will be served," she assured me as we entered the courthouse. The courtroom was a sterile, intimidating place, filled with the murmur of lawyers and the expectant gaze of the public. James sat across from me, his face impassive, his lawyer whispering in his ear. I felt a chill run down my spine as our eyes met. The man I had loved was now a stranger, an enemy. "Mrs. Thompson, are you ready?" the judge asked, his voice a calm authority in the chaos of my emotions. "Yes, Your Honor," I replied, my voice steady. The trial began, and the prosecutor laid out the case against James, presenting the evidence with precision and passion. The footage that Lucy had captured played on the screen, a stark, unflinching testament to James's violence and betrayal. "Mrs. Thompson, can you please describe the events leading up to the incident?" the prosecutor asked, her eyes kind and understanding. I knew something was wrong with James, but I never thought he would do something like this," I began, my voice trembling. "He brought a stranger into our home, told me he wanted a divorce, and then he hit me." The courtroom was silent, the weight of my words hanging in the air. "And your daughter, she captured this on camera," the prosecutor continued. "Yes, she did. She's a brave girl. She knew it was wrong and she wanted to help," I replied, tears welling in my eyes. The defense tried to paint a picture of a troubled marriage, of misunderstandings and provocations. But the evidence was clear, the truth undeniable. "Mrs. Thompson, isn't it true that you were controlling, that you drove your husband to this?" James's lawyer asked, his voice slick and accusing. "No, that's not true. I loved him, I trusted him, and he betrayed me," I shot back, anger and indignation rising within me. The trial continued. Witnesses called, testimonies given. But through it all, the evidence stood strong, a beacon of truth in a sea of lies and manipulations. Finally, the jury retired to deliberate, and I was left to wait, the minutes stretching into hours, my heart pounding with anticipation and fear. "Emma, whatever happens, you've done the right thing. You've stood up for yourself, for Lucy, for all the women who've been silenced," Mrs. Davis said, her hand on my shoulder. "I know, but I'm so scared," I whispered, tears threatening to spill. "You're strong, Emma. You've got this," she replied, her voice filled with conviction. The jury returned, and as the foreman read the verdict, my breath caught in my throat. "Guilty," he said, the word ringing in my ears. Tears of relief and triumph flowed down my face as the judge handed down the sentence. 5 years in prison for domestic violence and arranged marriages. "Justice has been served, Mrs. Thompson," the judge said, his eyes meeting mine. "Yes, Your Honor, it has," I replied, my voice filled with gratitude and resolve. Justice had been served, the battle won. The evidence had spoken, the truth had prevailed. James would pay for what he had done, and I could begin to rebuild my life, to heal. But the victory was bittersweet. The man I had loved was gone, replaced by a stranger, a monster. My family was broken, but we were strong. We had faced the darkness, and we had emerged victorious. As I left the courtroom, Lucy's hand in mine, I knew that we were forever changed. The scars would remain, but so would the strength, the courage, and the knowledge that we had stood tall and fought for justice. We were survivors, warriors, and we would move forward, together, our heads held high, our hearts filled with hope and determination. Justice had been served, and we were free.